guest with me, a women entrepreneur breaking barriers in the business world and the DtoC market. Welcome, Varija Bajaj. Now, to start with, could you please share the story behind the inception of your business and how you basically started enter the business world?
Wow. So Ambika, I started in 2004 and we slowly found inroads in the wedding and the bridal wear segment. Uh, and by 2015, I think it was hitting me hard that why don't I create something where I can leave behind a legacy. Office and You, which is a workwear brand for women. Working women in India in the office space is a very, very recent phenomenon. I'm not saying that women were not working, but they had a seat on the table now and they were representing the organizations and they were being heard. And that's when I felt that they were not being best represented in terms of their intellect, in terms of their power, in terms of the positions that they were holding. And that's where I felt uh, that most brands that exist, very few though, were aping whatever was being brought in by the West in terms of the skirts and the blazers and the trousers and the shirts. But how many Indian women actually wear those kind of clothes? And most likely probably not working in those circumstances or working in a very gender sensitive environment. That's where we brought in Office and You. And Office and You, of course, has a very strong India story. So we have saris, which are antiques saris, which you can probably wear it at an award function or you can wear it at events. We have the suiti version, so to say, of what smart workwear can be. So that's Office and You. And Lela, of course, is a boho brand. It's a very gypsy, very resort brand for both men and women. Again, looking at a target audience where men and women are traveling around the world, they are exposed to international cultures, yet have a very strong Indian ethos. So that's where we found a niche where we could take India internationally and also bring in the international exposure to India in some way. So it's sort of a fusion of cultures, which we are bringing forward through Lela.
So to give more brief about your brand is not only present in India, it's also basically offering its services internationally. So this
Yes.
is something a way starting an entrepreneur journey, being a woman. So there are many challenges and problems that is being faced. And as you said, you started in 2004. At that time, the problems were also being very different as compared today. So
Yeah.
I would like to throw a light on the challenges that you faced at that time when you started the business.
Many, I think, first started with my family, where the women of the family didn't work. And then, of course, stepping out into spaces where there were hardly any women, manufacturing setups. Even today, if you go in the textile industry, there are very few women, or labor. There are very few women in a lot of spaces. If you go to Gujarat, if you go to Surat, if you go to Ahmedabad, there are very few women who are in the space of they're definitely there in the
They're
marketing
in the
roles.
back office majorly. So I basically
Yes.
come from a printing background, like textile printing. I have basically done work with the textile machinery part. So I know
Oh,
women are majorly in the back office space. When we talk about the manufacturing or the labor, many
yes,
they are all men, and we women in that setup feels very awkward, and doing a business
absolutely.
is very difficult at that time. Yeah,
Absolutely. But when I also feel when you enter the battlefield, the bullet doesn't know whether you're a man or a woman.
right.
So I think you have to keep aside the thought first that you're a woman or, play the women card. It is the work that is going to speak for you. And I think that is what kept me driving and I kept dealing with the challenges and stereotypes. And even today, I think there are a lot of stereotypes when it comes to taking decisions by investors or by buyers when they're dealing with women entrepreneurs. But I think it's just their loss.
So your brand is like basically playing in a D2C space, right?
Yeah.
Selling something through a retail store, be it a mall or having a standalone, is easy, or may say it's a difficult thing, but it gives you a presence, right? But capturing your brand and selling your products via D2C, how do you think it's different from the physical setup and establishing your brand in a digital space?
Oh, very, very different. So 20 years, I think I've had an experience in the offline space. Now we are completely online for last 4 years, and we thought it's fairly easy to, sort of have an integrated sort of a retail presence. But no, it's a very different ball game, more so from the consumer point of view. So even when we choose textiles, I mean, we had to change our outlook in terms of what are the kind of textiles, what is the price point that we are going to work on. Because you do not get to feel the textiles until you buy in the online space. So it's very important that the outfit or the textile looks nice in the picture. I'm not talking being Photoshop, but it has to show its character in the visual and in the picture, because the customer has a disadvantage of not touching and feeling physically unless they have an omni sort of an experience where they get to feel it physically and then buy online. But if you're completely in the online space, I think that's the disadvantage, and you do have to see whether your product will look nice through the visual, because that is going to be the first marker in terms of deciding whether the person is going to buy or not. Again, in terms of the pricing, the market is really corrupt in terms of all kind of players. So you are competing with nobodies, you are competing with poor quality, you are competing with fake brands, but you are competing. So it's a fair play in that sense. So you have to make sure that either your communication is right in terms of what you're offering. So there is an you have to stick out a little more in terms of the right communication and marketing, or in terms of the pricing, because when the sale goes up on an Amazon or a Myntra, I think what matters is the pricing. So it has to be conveyed rightly. When we say the 4 Ps and now the 5, they have to be, if you're selling at the same place, either you're playing on the price, or you're playing on the promotion, or you're playing on the product. But if you're playing on the product, and if your product is slightly luxury, then your promotion has to be such to be able to convey the right message to the consumer.
This gives me a hint of my next question. I was just reading a post by you where you basically wrote about how the generation today is basically buying their products on Meesho.
Yeah.
And this is like actually changing. And you had a chat with somebody from this generation, the Gen Z generation, and when you asked about how do you like the fabric and everything, so how the target audience, the TG, has now changed. So the TG is the people who was before Gen Z and now the Gen Z. For them, fashion, and they do not repeat clothes. This is something like with the generation. So I am in between. So with me is like we'll buy some of the clothes, but those clothes should be luxurious, or say in the quality, good quality, so that they can be used in 3 years after also. Like if I'm buying a coat or if I'm buying a sari, so that can be used after 3 years also. But what is the difference that you are facing? Because you have like played with 3 generations. The generation of earlier who were buying clothes, then the generation again, and then the Gen Z. So this is a whole other ball game. So what is your comment on that?
So typically a 45, 50-year-old women very rarely buy clothes online.
Yes.
Or if they do, then they are in the bracket of high return percentage, because most likely they are not proportionate body structures.
Right.
With age, with bearing children, and a lot of other circumstances, women tend to get disproportionate. So you might be a small or a medium on the top, but you might be a large or an extra large at the bottom.
Right.
But the brands usually don't create. They create a body, a structured sort of if they're creating a medium on the top, they're creating a medium at the bottom. So that's one space. So that space definitely, or that target audience definitely likes to experience the brand, try. It's not about a 200 rupee t-shirt. It's not about the pricing. They're not price conscious, but they're fit conscious. So which is why custom tailoring will never go out of fashion for that particular target audience. When we talk about the younger generation, they are more hooked to e-commerce, but they are not the highest spenders. So which is why there will be a huge market for lower quality product. So I always feel that it's not about bad quality or good quality, or good brand and bad brand. It's about whether you've found your right customer fit. So poor quality product will always have an audience, because they will obviously be much economical and cheaper, and it will work very well for a certain kind of target audience. Like my house helps. They don't get time to sort of go out and shop, and they're constantly working. They all buy from Meesho, and
Right.
they're okay with the poor quality product. But that's
Mhm.
such a huge market,
Mhm.
and why not? So yes. So having said whatever about Meesho, I think they have a huge target audience. So one has to find out their target audience in terms of whether you want to be a fish in a big pond or whether you want to be a fish in the sea. So
Wanted to know, there is a sustainability issue that is also arising in textile industry, right? There's a war on sustainability. To create a good fabric, you have to use tons of water. I have worked with the machinery called Cornet Digital. They are into like printing specifically. I've worked with ColorJet. They are also into textile printing.
yeah.
So, majorly, what is your take on the sustainability and the reusability of the fabrics, right? Abhi, the fashion is so hard ki you won't repeat the clothes. So what happens to the clothes that you have bought, and then that will be like sent to the garbage? So what is the issue of sustainability and how you are tackling with that?
So sustainability, so we are working on certain research projects. So when we talk about sustainability, it usually comes at a high price. So sustainable textiles have to convert into sustainable businesses is a big challenge. So
Right.
usually when we're talking about sustainable textiles, let's say a hemp, which starts at about 600, 700 rupees per meter, is not, it's by far not affordable by majority of Indians.
Hmm.
It doesn't convert into sustainable businesses. It's very focused in a very niche market space.
Hmm.
What really is required is a textile which also converts to a sustainable business by offering the larger chunk of the middle class today in India.
Hmm.
So that is one space. कहते हैं ना, जहाँ रोटी कपड़ा मकान नहीं है, वहां सेंस ऑफ एवोल्यूशन or evolvement to understand that this is good for the planet or this is not good for the planet is very difficult to sell. But
Right.
having said that, I think it's everybody's responsibility to work towards it. So there's a lot of research that is going on in that space. The younger lot is very conscious, and I teach in so many fashion colleges. They're very, very conscious about the buzzword of sustainability, not realizing um, that it's not economical. But there are other ways of sustainability. So the concept of thrift shopping has come into play.
Right.
So a lot of these young girls, they're wearing very fashionable clothes, but clothes that has probably changed hands 4 times. They're
Hmm.
okay with that because they're the ones who are creating content on social media. They need to click their selfies every day and they need new clothes every day.
Right.
And maybe they don't want Misho kind of clothes. They need
Right.
something more fashionable. So, which is why thrift shopping, which I thought is never going to work in India, is doing fairly well for that generation. Um, so again, each one there's a target market for both sustainable clothing in in the thrift shopping space and in a space um, which is a 50 plus or a 45 plus, who understand the story, who can afford it, who have arrived in life, who have that extra spare financials to spend on quality clothing, and clothing that is also going to save the planet. And
Right.
so there is that space, and then there is this space, and then there are people in the middle who are fluctuating between the two. So too early to say where India is really trending.
Yeah.
But yes, I think it's a responsibility of every shopper and every maker to at least give it a try and give it their
So your brand is into a D2C segment. So I have two questions in that. One is the technology part, like how you are setting up your website, or if you are like planning for a app or something like to reach out to your customer. Second is the logistic. So when you are saying you are basically based in India and also covering the international market, uh, moving your product from like India to there, how is this working for you? Like one, we'll cover the topic of technology and then the logistics. How basically you are from your products, how they are reaching to the customer. So the whole journey that is being traveled by your brand.
So I'll cover the first part first, which is
Technology. Technology.
technology. There's no running away. In every sense, be it product, be it buying, be it vendor management, be it inventory management, be it communication and marketing, what we used to do 20 years ago and what we do now, we are creating content every day. We are creating contents every day. So every day we are creating multiple content in terms of stories. The content that goes on LinkedIn is very different from what goes on Insta, is very different from what goes on Twitter, Facebook, even Pinterest for that matter. So the audience is very, very different. So the kind of communication we have is very different. And being in the e-commerce space where people don't get to directly experience the product, the communication has to be more robust. It can't happen without technology, without knowing the know-hows of editing, or photography, direction, lighting, all of that. So a lot of science is coming into play in art when we're talking about content creation. Inventory management, I still remember when we started, we thought, like you asked me, we thought it's fairly easy that we'll create content and we'll do an online business, but no, not really. So you do need certain applications which work um, in conjunction with the marketplaces, and which are best for. So for example, if we are, so one of the softwares that's leading in India is Unicommerce,
Yes.
where if my product, let's say I have 10 shirts as an inventory, what if those 10 shirts get sold in 5 minutes in a Flipkart? Can I book orders from Myntra? If I do, but I don't have them in inventory. So that would be a manual way of managing inventory. But in my system, if my 10, so this sort of updates the system every couple of seconds. So if the product is sold in a Flipkart, it would show a nil inventory to Myntra just in a couple of seconds. It would not book orders.
Okay.
So that's how technology comes into play. And then, of course, logistics. So a lot of the online delivery partners, delivery aggregators, they come into play because we have a very short period. We have 24 hours to make sure that the product is available. So if you're listed on Amazon Prime, you make sure that within 24 hours you get the product. So everything has to work seamlessly in terms of the packing, in terms of the dispatch, in terms of the delivery. So everything happens only through technology. I think we'll be extremely handicapped if we are not assisted by technology. It's not humanly possible to run a big business and so many dispatches in a day without technology. Now your second question. So we went international online only last month. And right now we are shipping directly through our warehouse. and the customer pays additional for the shipping charges. They're actually inbuilt in the cost and they don't mind paying because we are offering them the India prices. But sooner, what we would do, since we are right now live in about 6 major countries: US, UK, Australia, Canada, UAE, and one more. And what we would do, that wherever we feel that this is where we are selling the most, we would soon have our warehouses where the customer gets to get a return option. We don't have a return option unless the product is damaged. If you have a fitting issue, it's you'll have to pay to and fro the shipping. So that is a disadvantage right now, because we're still trying to figure out, and I think a couple of months down the line, once we have a fair idea that which country or maybe all of it, we'll have local warehouses where it'll be much easier for the consumer to return and exchange the product.
So, ma'am, to just wrap up this interview, just as I introduced, Key SMB Connect is basically doing multiple events. So, how do
Yeah.
you think event is basically helping entrepreneurs, basically not only women, men, how they are helping the businesses and how they are basically affecting physical events? How they do you think it's useful for the businesses perspective?
I think the focused events have become very imperative because there's so much that is online. Every information is just a click away. And it becomes very difficult to identify whether that information is genuine or whether it's generated through ChatGPT.
Hmm.
So even the LinkedIn comments I see today are generated through ChatGPT. There are these long comments come, so you don't know what is genuine and what's not genuine. So very focused events are absolutely imperative to network with the right people
Right.
and grow the business together. And when I say network with the right people, maybe the entire supply chain, if they sort of connect together. I think one of the recent examples was the Bharat Tex. It
Yes.
was the first time that the entire supply chain came together. Of course, we as fashion designers, we have separate events in terms of the fashion weeks. Then those vendors, they have a separate event. The exporters, they have a different sort of a target audience. But this was the first time we really got to know what India stands for when it comes to the fashion and the textile business.
Yes.
I think a lot of us were not even aware that this existed, or such
Right.
exporters existed, or such brands existed, or such textiles existed. And maybe on the other side, even the textile suppliers or manufacturers, they didn't know that such buyers existed.
Right.
It
Right.
was it was a beautiful
Hmm.
effort, and I think for the first of its kind in India.
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
think that
You want to give the upcoming women entrepreneurs or who are basically struggling towards creating their brand?
I think we are in very exciting times when it comes to creating a brand or a product. You could be doing either. One is very important. Is there a need in the market of what you're creating, or are you creating just for your own satisfaction? Because if you're not creating something what the consumer wants and you're not understanding the pulse of the consumer, uh, you will probably not be required soon. So let's not waste our time in creating something which is purely out of our own passion and which is only servicing us. So
Right.
as designers or as product creators, it is very important to have an outside in approach than an inside out approach. Understand your consumer, understand your target audience, understand technology very well, because there's no running away from technology, and be resilient to changes, because the changes which were happening every 5 years or 10 years pre-COVID, they're happening every couple of months now.
Right.
So if you're not resilient to change, the Darwin's theory will act to its best. So it's very important to be resilient to change. I think these are just a few handful tips that I can think right now.